Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Immeasurables featuring my curly hair. I had kind of a straight hair moment in the beginning of this season, but I normally do that for like special occasions and whenever I feel like it, because it takes me literally 3 hours to do my hair because of how big it is. But we're back with another episode of Immeasurables. This episode in specific is episode 3, entitled What I Learned in My 1-Year Subscription to Vogue Magazine. I want to preface this episode by talking about how much I don't hate Vogue, but their history and their story as one of the most, if not the most influential fashion magazine is so important. And I could do another video talking about the history of Vogue. But this episode in specific is talking about my experience with Vogue Magazine and my subscription, which lasted a year. Their subscriptions are on a yearly basis and renewed on a yearly basis. So I subscribed to Vogue Magazine in November 2019 through November 2020, which significantly was the pandemic year. So coincidentally, I got the best year to subscribe to Vogue. And I'm going to talk about it in this episode. But before I get into that, I want to thank you guys again for your continued support with Immeasurables. If you haven't followed the Discord, I highly recommend you do. I post a crap ton of content on there, and specific content that is exclusive to Discord only, and as well as our social medias. Make sure you follow everything on there and continue giving me feedback and stuff of what you like and what you don't like of Immeasurables. It means a lot to me in what I want to do with fashion and what I want to do with my career and stuff. So with that, I give you what I learned in my 1-year subscription to Vogue Magazine. So I first want to start off by talking about how I am a communication student in college. And with communication, I kind of learned the ups and downs and the backstages of what it takes to write a magazine. Of course, I'm only in my sophomore year, but couple classes I've taken have taken me into the backstages of writing a magazine and the newspaper and journalism industry as a whole. So I kind of know what it takes to write I'm of course not skilled enough to write a magazine, or am I? But I kind of know what it takes to write a magazine, and something I learned through my years in school is that anyone can be a journalist. Anyone can write their own story. So the magazine format overall is kind of outdated, since news this day is so instantaneous. Like, most of our news stories come from first-hand accounts, or what they're called, first-hand accounts of people on their phone recording something and then taking it, posting it to Facebook, and then news outlets pick it up from there. So the whole magazine aspect and newspaper aspect is outdated, since news is collected every second of the day, no matter what time, no matter what hour. And you yourself can be a journalist by recording something from your very own home. I used to want to be a fashion journalist, but not anymore, and Vogue may or may not be the reason why. I don't know. The fashion community as a whole is just very, very toxic in a way. I've talked about it before, but especially fashion news is very competitive, very, very, it takes a lot out of you, if that makes sense. But fashion, one thing I learned with magazine writing and such is fashion is further than what celebrities are wearing. Fashion is so much more than what is the Met Gala. What did Harry Styles wear to the Met Gala? Fashion is about education. It's about where Harry Styles' clothes came from. It's about how Harry Styles' clothes were made. And it's about the history and tradition of where did Harry Styles' clothes come from? What tradition did it originate from? And stuff like that. So first of all, I have if you're watching this on a YouTube, I have a little magazine to show you, which coincidentally was the June-July issue of 2020. if you're watching this on a podcast platform, I'll kind of describe to you in detail as to what entails to this magazine, but I just wanted to give you a little example of what I'm talking about. So empty pages is the first section I want to talk about. So, I mean, this one is kind of a because it was the pandemic issue, and I guess the first issue they wrote since the pandemic. So, but for an example, I want to show you every page of Vogue magazine in a way. If you look, it's ads for every story. There's 4 to 5 ads that accompany the story. Story ad. And that's just not Vogue in general, that's just every fashion magazine and every magazine in general, because a full cover page, an ad, might I remind you, in color, if you want to advertise on Vogue in color, a full page is $157,734. So you can either buy a house or you can advertise on Vogue, which in turn gets you a house. It makes sense why it costs that much, since it is a reputable magazine, and to get your brand out there, it returns back to you, of course, since Vogue has such a big audience. You do get the exposure you really want. So, but like I said, you can either buy a house or you can advertise to Vogue. I mean, as they should. It's like I said, it's a reputable magazine. Next, and I don't remember what what entails to this issue, but I do want to kind of dive into politics. Don't get mad at me. I'm only gonna cover surface level, but I don't remember if it's that issue specifically, but Vogue is very biased. I don't know if you've noticed that already, or if you've read Vogue before, or if you just go on their Instagram or on their Twitter or read their stories online, you can very much tell that it is biased. And specifically in American politics, you could tell that not all Republicans are good or bad, not all Democrats are good or bad, but I'm gonna beat around the bush on this, but Vogue is very much like tailored to one side, and that makes it very biased, very very, very hard to read, as if you want to identify yourself as one side, if you want to identify yourself as the other side. It's very hard to read, especially if you identify with a specific side. It's very challenging to read since it's not tailored for you. So enough with that. It's fashion is just in general, it's just a very objective thing. I believe fashion, I see fashion as objective. So Vogue magazine, very much reading it and very much absorbing it and what it entails to it, is very much based off of opinion, very much based off of the authors and what contracts they've signed, what advertisements they've had, and the credibility of that author. So basically, it's not real. The content isn't real. It's tailored to what they're allowed to say and what their management tells them to say. It's not about just fashion anymore. It's about saying what is right for them to say in that moment. Next, Vogue is actually staying afloat, if I've noticed, more so with their 73 questions and their Get Ready With Me style videos. I don't know if you've seen those before. I highly recommend you do. They're really fun. Loads of celebrities, from Olivia Rodrigo to Rihanna's done one. I remember that was the first one I watched, but they stay afloat with those kind of videos. I don't believe their magazine sales have much of an impact as those videos do. Like I said, it's more recent, more fresh, more fun. But they stay afloat with those kind of videos, and the kind of people that they put on those videos aren't very much advertised in the magazines, if that makes sense. Like, I believe it was Olivia Rodrigo that did one recently, and I still haven't seen a cover with Olivia Rodrigo on it. I believe she did Vogue Singapore, though. Vogue Singapore, Vogue Hong Kong, I don't remember exactly. But the impact that Olivia Rodrigo or Charli D'Amelio could have on Vogue as a whole, as a magazine, putting them on a cover of a Vogue magazine could skyrocket their sales and change their demographic for good. But they're more so sticking those to the internet and to the 73 questions, of course. And they're giving the magazine covers to the same 3 or 4 fashion girls. You know who I'm talking about. In all, Vogue is, like I said, yeah, it could be so nice to have Charli D'Amelio race the cover of Vogue, for example, instead of, the same nepotism models that grace, or even you can have new face models, which could definitely break them into the industry, of course, instead of having the same supermodels on board every single cover. And it's Vogue internationally, it's the same girls that are being used on the cover of magazines, instead of having a new-faced model that just graced the runway. So in all, Vogue is just a name. For people who, when I first started fashion, I thought I knew Vogue. I knew Vogue was a fashion magazine. But I didn't know the story behind it and such. But people mostly subscribe to the magazine because of the name, and barely look at what they are selling you, for example. Reading Vogue, when I subscribed to Vogue, I was like, oh yeah, like let's read about fashion, not knowing that it's very, very objective. Like it's the opinions of the people writing them who are under contract, under oath, under stuff like that. It's very politically, how do you say that? Politically tailored to one side of politics, and I don't know, just I do my research before reading Vogue magazine, which I didn't know before reading Vogue. I won't be resubscribing anytime soon. I do like to read Vogue online for free. But every once in a while I do get those emails asking to resubscribe for $20-something and get a free tote bag. I do have the free tote bag from the first time that I did subscribe. But I do like Vogue, overall, Vogue magazine, for the year that I did subscribe, coincidentally the pandemic year, as an archive piece. Like, this magazine in like 20 years could mean a lot. Like, I could read these to my kids and show them, like, oh, what t-shirts were in style this year. How did people handle the pandemic, for example? This page talks about how celebrities and designers handled staying at home for the first time, and the danger that it was to maybe we could never go out again. Maybe this was the last time ever we'd see, people, and it really was a scary time. So that could be very significant in 20 years from now. So, I do like it overall as, history, because it's a physical like time stamp of an era that we lived in. In general, to close off, fashion is meant to be celebrated, but Vogue makes it so difficult, at least for me, to understand and digest. A normal audience member who didn't know anything about fashion, like me, when I first subscribed to Vogue, I didn't know a thing about Vogue, could not understand Vogue. I don't know if it's the language that they use or if I was just uneducated at the time, but it's very, very difficult for someone who doesn't understand fashion to read Vogue. There should be a media outlet that is easy to digest, non-corrupt by politics, and could be fun for fans of all spectrums of fashion. Interesting concept, right? Anyways, not to bash Vogue, I just had an average experience reading it. Like I said, I do like to read like the little pieces of, oh, what's in style now? Oh, what's in style next season? Oh, who's coming to Fashion Week this week or this year? But I think it just universally goes for all fashion magazines. They're all kind of the same. Vogue just happens to be the biggest one. So Vogue just has a reputation and an audience to take care of, so they just have too much on the line. And that's all I got. Thank you again for everyone who's listening to Immeasurables and taking time out of their days to listen to my voice. Make sure to subscribe and share this with all of your friends who like fashion, and subscribe to all of the social medias and all of the Discords and all that stuff. It really means a lot to me. And thank you again. Signing off.